Hello, everybody. This is your host, Aram Melkoumov. When you're listening to the Product Innovation Show, every week, the guests that we have on our show share their stories and wisdom on how to ship a great product. Jean Lebrument, I hope I said that correctly, is the co-founder, CTO, and CPO at Brigade. He studied at the European Institute of Innovation Technology and University of California. He's a real technical expert who is doing both CPO and CTO roles at the same time at his company. Jean, pleasure to have you here. Thank you for coming on.
Hello, and thank you very much for inviting me on this podcast.
Awesome. So first question, it's not common. I come across people who do both roles successfully, might I add. So maybe let's start off with that as my first question. CTO versus CPO, Chief Technology Officer versus Chief Product Officer. What's the dynamic between these two types of roles and why do you need both?
Well, when you build a product in a startup technology, tech company, it requires product to know what you're going to offer to your users, like what is your service. And the tech, the tech is like how you're going to build your actual product. So you need both to have a full picture. And at the very beginning of a company that doesn't require like very research and development, let's say phase, it does make sense because you have a full picture of when you want to do something, what the cost of it, and how is it hard to do it? Is it long? Is it difficult? And based on the product vision you will start to shape, you will be able to know what are the technical requirements of it, and to make the very early decisions that will pave the way of the future of tech of your company. So for Brigade, which is a platform to match freelancers and companies and businesses in hospitality and healthcare industries for short to medium term missions, it made sense because we are a tech company where all the service go through technology and through our products, and all the operation are scaling through the tech as well. So we are definitely a tech company at heart, but it didn't mean that we had to go into extensive research and development for years, like you could have done if you're like Algolia, for instance. So it really makes sense that the two position will be filled by a single person, and it worked quite well for 5.5 years. Brigade is 6 years old, and 6 months ago I decided to split the two roles actually, and to be fully on the product side. It made sense because company grew up a lot. We did a massive refactoring during the COVID crisis, where actually restaurants were closed, yeah. And so most of our business was shut down. So it made sense for us to really let's focus on the foundation of the product instead of the product roadmap, and it just made a significant upgrade of the technical stack and architecture. So we are really like paving the way of the future growth and making the tech being the enabler of it. So yeah, and after this massive refactoring where we came from 2 million line of codes to 500K, it was a good time for me to split the role because tech parts is going more into for instance data engineering, not only for the product but for the ops as well, for the sales and so on. And it's going a bit less close from the product, let's say. So it's difficult as well. You're scaling the product team. We are almost 10 in the product team right now. So it's difficult to keep the same vision on both sides that are starting getting a bit like of a distance between each other. So yeah, this is where I didn't want to be either like far from the tech, far from the product, but keeping two positions. So it made sense for me at this point to actually split both.
Okay. And just out of curiosity, I know you're a smaller team, and you said that you were able to achieve managing both roles through the last 5.5 years. But were there ever times where you felt like, if you were objectively looking at like what a CTO or a CPO would maybe fight each other on, did you ever had to like conflict on yourself in terms of decisions to be made?
Yeah, well, on top of being CPO and CTO, I was, one of the two founder, and when you think about, I mean, when you're a CPO and CTO in a startup or it's a startup, first you just think at the company, overall at the company and what the company need to do in order to be successful. So of course, like it might be struggling sometimes when you have to make some trade-off, especially, when you have to invest a bit of time on some technical refactorings versus moving forward on your product roadmap. So at the end, it's always, finding the right, I would say, sweet spot between, investing time and effort on the tech and moving forward on the business side. And I mean, you try to do the best decision based on the parameters you have and based on the budget you have and a lot of other stuff. But yeah, I mean, it's constant trade-off. At least, I don't have to debate and to spend a lot of time to speak to somebody and to try to convince somebody. I do it by myself. I used to do it by myself because now we have to. So yeah, I mean, it doesn't reduce the struggle, but you just get faster to a decision.
Yeah, and you were able to do this in this type of role. Maybe it was tied. Maybe it was possible because of like the industry you're in. But just off the top of your head, are there any products in adjacent or like not in your industry that you think that can't be achieved? Or do you think it can be achieved just as long as the size of the team is small enough to maintain it?
No, I think if you are, very much like a deep tech company, like you tech is very much about something that hasn't been done yet. You really have, you need to have like a CTO that is 100% focused on the tech, because this is like, the core foundation of the company. Mm-hmm. And I believe, you can't be so much into something disruptive and managing the project at the same time. So I think it's good. You can do this when your tech is actually focused on how to implement the product in the best way possible, mm-hmm. Because it's very closely linked and it makes sense until a certain stage that we reach with Brigade. But, it's not something I would advise for any company. Plus, it really depends on who is CTO of the company, because some CTO are very much tech oriented. Some others, like me, are more like business oriented, let's say, even if you have a strong technical background. And, like not all CTO could be product and the opposite is true as well. So I think it's a matter of what your business is about. How do you feel, in terms of vibe? What are your skills and what do you like to do? Because at the end, you don't make choices if you don't want to make those choices as well. So it's a bit of everything.
And so have you found a CTO yet in the last 6 months?
Or not yet? So actually, it was quite easy for me because 4 years ago, I hired the head of engineering. That was the first manager of the technical team when we started to scale and started to have my first product managers as well. Then it became like, I think 2 years ago, like even a bit more than like 2.5 years ago, something, VP of engineering. And he managed on top of the tech team, but the Q&A and the QA. And that was a good step for him. And then, like, it really made sense that he took over like the CTO role and he did this like during the last winter.
Cool. Well, congratulations. It's that seems like an easy path you went through.
If you want a funny story about that, actually, when I started Brigade with my co-founder, I was finishing my master degree. And Brigade was actually my last, like my final internship, the last 6 months of your master degree. And so you have to go through a jury to validate the fact that the company you're building is not bullshit and you're not going to, like to Thailand for 6 months. Okay. And like my, then head of engineering used to be like the director of the master degree of my engineering school. And he was, like the boss of the jury to decide if yes or no my company is legit and I have a legit final internship. And we already knew a bit of each other. And after my master's degree, we started to have a friendly relationship. And one day I told him like, okay, company is doing well. We just, raise some funds, and we're hiring. I'm managing like pretty much like 10 people right now, but I can't be that much focused into management. So I'm looking for a head of that would take over like the day-to-day operation and the management of the team. I say, well, I'm basically looking for somebody that has your age, your background, your skills, no. And he told me, well, I am interested. And I was like, okay. So no, we started interview. Yeah, and the funny thing is, most of the team came from the same school and got him as a head of master degrees. So when I told them like Brieux, his name is Brieux, we must probably be joining us. Everybody was super happy about that because he, like people liked him a lot as a students. So yeah, this is a funny story, and so we built together a very long relationship, working relationship, and so it really made sense for everybody, for him, for me, and from the company, that he turned to be the CTO.
That's amazing. Yeah, I don't know many people who hire their professors or like their teachers before, yeah. So in their company. So that's amazing. Congrats. Looks like a great fit. The next question I have, Jean, is, well, you and I both know that sometimes when building a product, unfortunately, some steps in product development get skipped for various reasons in many companies that I work with, that you've come across. And like one of them could be that you're not bringing in devs into the loop or the conversation quickly enough. And so like, I think in your sense, being a CTO and CPO, like product roadmap, dictates kind of where you're building a product and where you're going to. But sometimes, unfortunately, in some companies, product managers or the CPO doesn't bring in developers early enough in that process. So I wanted to ask, why do you think this happens?
Yeah, well, that's a real good point, and you always have to be aware of when is the right time to bring like developers in the conversation and QA as well, because you can't bring them in all the discussions, because otherwise they will spend all the time in meetings and not being actually developing the feature and the product. So you have to find like the right momentum for them to enter in the discussion. And I think, to be honest, I mean, we try to, the way we do it at Brigade is basically like product managers, they build roadmap over two things, OKRs that are like, defined every 6 months, and a product strategy that is completely user-centric and that is defined for every year, basically every year, right? Like, I would like the user to experience by the end of next year. And so then, like each product manager is going to build his own roadmap, regarding like how to tackle those two objectives, let's say, OKR, that are very much business-oriented objectives, and the product strategy, which is user-centric. And then I will validate with them their plan, their roadmap, kind of initiatives they want to pursue. And as soon as we have a definite list of what is going to happen in terms of focuses, not features, but focuses and initiatives to carry on during the semester, we involve the tech team to say, okay, these are, everything you need to know, objectives, product strategy, and the list of initiatives we believe that will both implement the product strategy and reach the business objectives that we have in the OKRs. And so you're really like giving them all the same kind of information that you gave to the product team, but at a later stage. And then, we are really like working together to build a solution, because the tech will be very, very often the tech will give actually very good solution, because first, based on the technology we'll use, especially on the front end as well, and based on the architecture of the back end, they might come with ideas like, actually, we could do like this, it will be super easy and it will work just fine for the users. And on top of that, they use a lot of apps and services as well, so they can have good idea from other services and app they are using. Mm-hmm. So this is why we always try it on the, crafting, moments when you have your roadmap to bring them on and to make sure we think all together about what should be the solutions we would like to implement.
Oh, I'm just curious, can you maybe just explain for the listeners, what would you say is the difference between a feature, a focus, or an initiative?
Yeah, well, initiatives is like what kind of solution we would like to build that we think that will tackle the problems.
Okay.
And then after you will, in an extensive way, be thinking about what should be the solution, like the definite user-facing solution. And then you have like some wireframing, design, specs, and then you come up with the actual proper feature that need to be implemented by developers. And so for me, the initiatives, it will be like all the, like basically me, when I speak with product managers, I like to tell them that they build a roadmap, not of features, but of initiatives, because the features will actually be defined with design, tech, product management. But I don't want like to come up with, okay, we have OKRs at the beginning of the year. Let's say I have product strategy and I will build a 6-month roadmap in 2 weeks out of those 2. The thing is, when you do this, you skip the research part, which is super important as product managers. You skip the ideation part that you do as well with the tech team. The wireframes, the testing. I mean, you skip all the parts by doing this. So you can be sure that the roadmap you will get out from your head just by looking at the OKRs and the product strategy will make 90% of chance that it will be completely wrong. So I like to speak about initiatives, and then after the research phase, after doing some trying some stuff, trying some ideas. It can be like directly production on the product, or it can be just through wireframes and mockups. Then after you have a better idea of what you're going actually to build, and you can speak about doing a feature.
Awesome. Oh, cool. Thanks for explaining that. On the same kind of line, I'm curious to know, we had talked about when to get developers involved. What about QA? Because oftentimes I've seen QA get involved way too late in the process.
Yeah.
How do you do it at Brigade?
Yeah, so me, QA at Brigade is something I introduced with a proper position and a proper team 3 years ago, I would say. So it's always something I put a lot of value into this, because for me, it's something that first, you will, of course, have less bugs for your users, but in my mind, it actually makes product and tech team work faster and in a better way. And when I first created this small team of 2 people in the QA team, I put them right in the middle of product and tech, because for me, as soon as you start to have a proper idea of the feature you're going to build, QA should be involved, so they understand what is the need, what the feature way to look like, what's the purpose, what's the outcome of the feature, and they have time to then think about okay, what should be all the use case that the feature will be covering, and what is the definition of done. So actually, it will even help developers to have a better picture of what's need to be built. And on top of that, they will have time to think about, okay, what are the corner case? What are the side effects? And to make sure that when we will actually be on a staging mode and be trying the features, they will have so much learning about this, that they will be able to be way better in their job. And they won't be discovering the feature right before the production, and won't be able to cover up all the scenarios of the feature, because they will be very short time.
Cool. No, I've just seen so many failures when it comes to that. So thanks for sharing your points on that. Last couple of questions before I get into the fireside questions. But every CPO, CTO, I'm sure has come across a situation where they worked on their worst product, a feature idea that they had to deal with in their companies. A lot of people don't ever talk about the horror stories of what it is, because they're too ashamed to talk about publicly. But me and you had a chance to connect previously, and I think there was one thing that you brought up in your story that I wanted to talk about, which was your experience building out the availability feature at Brigade. So maybe tell the audience a little bit what the feature was? And then my next question is, how soon did you realize that whatever you were working on was not working?
Yeah, well, that's a good point. So yeah, we had at some point to, I mean, so how it works is when businesses create missions on the platform, brigaders that have all the skills required, they receive proposition of missions on the app through a push notification. And the thing is, like of course, nobody is available like every day of the week, and some people have different schedule. So we introduced a feature so they can put their unavailabilities to make sure that we won't send them notification of missions when they're actually not available at all. And so, it seemed to be quite basic feature, honestly. So we didn't, like and the pressure to release something fast on that was quite high, because we got a lot of feedback from users saying like, stop sending me a proposition on mission. I already say no because I'm not available, and I will never be available on Saturday and Sunday, for instance, because I'm working from Monday to Friday, let's say. And so we came out with a very basic solution. We did few tests within the company, and everybody used it just fine. So we were like confident that the level of risk of failing it's quite low, and obviously didn't happen this way. And so we released the feature, and we don't have any feedback from users, so we're like, okay, just fine, it's good. And then at some point we realized that we start to receive some emails from users saying like, well, Brigade is not working that well right now. I'm not receiving much missions. What's going on? Is it because of COVID? What's going on? Because still it was during the COVID pandemic. And we're like, no, it should be fine. We don't understand. And then we check how they use this feature, and we see that actually they reversed availabilities and unavailabilities. And basically, instead of saying like, I'm not available Saturday, Sunday, they say I'm not available Monday, Friday. And so of course they don't get much missions after that. And actually we understood that a significant amount of people actually misunderstood the feature, and so we had to release like very, very fast modification on this feature to make it like like people can actually understand it better. And after we had to make like a reactivation campaign saying, hey guys, maybe we upgraded the features. We just reset the setting of the way you were using the feature, and actually we had people that were using us back like a lot, and because they did receive less proposition for some period of time. Some even people were just stopping using us, because they got like very, very few missions, and they were like, okay, Brigade doesn't work much right now, so I would just go somewhere else. So yeah, that was actually a good reminder of, even when you do very basic stuff, you always have to to take the time to do a proper process to make sure that you're not missing anything.
And so having gone through that learning process, what would you have done differently? Like, would you have rolled it out to like a pilot group of users first? Would you done some user research on like what people's understanding is of availabilities? I don't know.
I would say a bit of everything, trying some mockups with them first. You propose to some of the users just to join to join like a Zoom meeting, and you show them some screens, and you just tell them, okay, like, how do you use those screens? What do you think it does? How is it working? And then you see, and I'm sure in 10 minutes we'll have figured out that the solution that we first planned was wrong, but we didn't took these 10 minutes. So yeah, I think this is the main thing. And then I will say as well, I think it showed as well that on the specific part of the product, we didn't went enough into data analysis, because I'm sure we will have seen like some patterns that actually didn't make much sense, and it has maybe like, okay, maybe we should just call this user, call this person to see like, hey, you actually got it right, or what? And so, I think we just, like published and released this feature, and we just moved on. And we're like, it's, like so basic that we don't risk anything. So let's go back on more difficult stuff. And we completely missed it.
Well, no, it's very interesting. It's such a common thing, right? You think people will get, but it's amazing what interpretation by one person could be different to another. Yeah, thanks for sharing that story, Joe. Well, I'm going to jump into these fireside questions. It's 4 questions. Try to answer it in a minute or less. So I'm putting you on the hot seat. All right, ready? All right. So the first question I have is that a lot of companies don't have very transparent product processes. Why do you think this happens, and who needs to fix it and how?
Okay. I think people are afraid that if they go too much open regarding how they build product features, they might receive too many feedbacks from different teams saying, I think the solution should be like that. And I think people try, like to get away from this problem, like to like they prefer to stay on their own and not to share much about this, which I believe is a mistake in the end, because it's important to listen to what the stakeholders have to say, and important to explain them why you made a decision. But otherwise, the product will feel, people will feel the product is completely out of the real life of our users, and what the stakeholders and people on the field, let's say, do feel. So I believe it's very important to keep connection with them.
And who do you think in an organization, who's responsible for making sure that product processes are well, created or maintained?
The CPO.
CPO. Okay, cool. Next question. So there's a lot of pressure to do with what a big customer wants you to do. I'm sure you've maybe come across this. How do you dig yourself out of these type of situations as a product leader?
For me, I will always go back on what's your problem actually. And because, usually when you receive a lot of pressure about something, people will go a lot about like, we should do this. And instead of, this is the problem. And so me, I will always like, okay, what is the problem? How often does it occur? What is the real potential of the solution in terms of usage, in terms of, is it only for this customer, or can it be like a global problem for all of our clients? So, you really have to go behind the scene a bit of this solution that everybody wants to be implemented, to understand like what's going on actually. And sometimes you have to say yes, sometimes you have to say no. Like I say no a lot, and you have to understand when actually it might be a deal breaker and it's not. And so, yeah, I think, like me, I got directly involved when pressure is high, because I really want to, like to have a closer look myself, and to judge, to say like, okay, this seems something we'll definitely work on that, or I don't think it's that important, or I don't think is a real problem, or I don't think it's something that should be part of a product because it's something very specific for these clients. But we are not a SaaS, we are a marketplace. So luckily, it doesn't happen quite often. Might happen when you work with very large groups, and this is the first time you work with very big groups, and they might have a bit of different needs because the persona is a bit different. And then, you have to be quite open-minded, because you're like, these are, like new clients, new kind of clients that I didn't have before. And I want to have other clients like that. So maybe I have a very good product market fit for smaller clients, but maybe for them, it's like 80% of it. And I really understand what are the 20% missing.
No, it's very interesting. I can understand marketplaces being different. It's always a challenge, I feel, for product managers, because they get distracted by like sales, and sales says, oh, we have these 2 enterprises, they want this feature, go build it, so we could sell and make more money. And yeah, it's like common, situation, I think, daily. So it's tough. I think pushing back is also the hardest thing. A lot of product managers don't have the training around to be able to rebut or like, put some boundaries in place. So I think that's something that I think could be trained somehow. I don't know how, but
I think it's one of the main soft skill I would say of a project manager is like you have to explain decisions and to make people like agree. I mean, yeah, I kind of agree. I say, okay, I understand, like to understand your decision at least. And I think it's super important because if you're like not able to find a good way to communicate with sales that are usually very good at communication, they will be undermining the decision that you took, even if they're legit. And then this is how you can start to have like heated debate and not a very good relationship between product and sales.
Yeah, no, very true. Okay, two more questions, Jean. A lot of people in the industry try to copy the features of their competitors because they've done it. It must be working. We should just copy it. So from your perspective, why do you think they do it and not just focus on customers? And what should you do instead?
Because it's easy, it's always easy to copy what somebody did. I think, like me, my position on that is like pretty much in the center, in the middle. Of course, copying without even trying to understand what problem you're solving and how the user will be using this feature and so on. It's completely, doesn't make sense at all. And on the other side, if for everything you have to think from scratch, take a lot of time on the research and the discovery, you won't be going fast enough for the company needs. So you have to make some kind of a trade-off between, okay, I mean, everybody is doing this and we have the same problem. So we might use this as not to copy, but just think in mind that maybe actually the solution is good and maybe we should have something like similar. And some other features, we will be completely against it because it won't be part of the first the vision and the company culture. And this is, I find it so, like amazing to see that when, like competitors, they scale and they start to, reach a certain level of maturity as companies and as products. Even like direct competitors, they start to have like very different way of approaching some features and some even like core features of your value proposition, because you can really see like the difference in terms of culture and terms of values as well.
Yeah.
And I find this very interesting. And this is why at some point it's super important to create your product principles, because it helps you to scale the product culture among the product team, the tech team, and even the company. Because even for the sales and the stakeholders, they will understand why we build feature in a certain way, because what are the values we are, we want to have in our products. Actually, I just did this like 1 month ago.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, because we're at a stage where, and this is how I introduce this to the team. I say, I give exactly the same requirement, like product specification to 10 different teams. We will have 10 different products. Because each team will go personal about the way they feel about the project, about the feature, about how users should use the feature, deal with this problem, and so on and so on. And so we will have 10 different products at the end. So it's very important that we make the company culture and product culture scale through product principles. So for everybody that is building the products, as product manager, the developers or stakeholders, they know what is the soul, let's say, of the product and how we should be building stuff.
No, that's awesome. I'm gonna take a note of that. Thank you for sharing. Last question is, what's your perspective on asking users, like your end users, what to build? How bad, how good of an idea is it? What do you do as a product person instead?
Yeah, well, that's always I will say the challenge, because I don't believe that your users will always be the one finding the best idea to solve the problem. I think even Henry Ford said something about that, like if I ask people what they wanted, they would have told me like, I want faster horses. I don't know if it's a true thing, but it's quite true, a fun answer. Yeah. But it's very important to understand what is our problem. And I think the biggest challenge and the most important thing is not to have them like how they will fix their problem, but what are the real problem. And you really have to go deep into like the understanding of what's the struggle actually. So then you have all the information to start working on different solutions, and then to present those solutions to your users, and without giving them any context to see how they will use each of them solution to see which one fits the most.
Yeah. Okay. No, thank you for answering that. That was the last question on the fireside side. So thank you. I think we're good, Jean. We'll wrap it up. So thank you so much for coming on our show and sharing your wealth of experience. And as always, thank you to our listeners for constantly tuning in and supporting the show and following us on LinkedIn and YouTube. So thank you, Jean. It was a pleasure having you on our show.
Pleasure too. Thank you very much. And I hope your listeners enjoyed a bit of useful advice.